It's certainly an honor and a privilege to be with you today as we wrap up our capital campaign. And before I get into my prepared remarks, I think it's appropriate that, and this will be a little repetitive, but it's significant enough to me, I feel like I need to share it with you. I joined this church in 1976. My wife and I got married in 1981. Then, as our 3 children approached teenage years, they decided that they wanted to be involved in a youth group in West Little Rock. And right at the end of Ed Matthews' tenure here as a senior pastor, we never moved our membership, but we wanted to be with our children where they were in church, and we had several years of absence from here. The reason I share all this with you today, it was on this same Sunday in 2003, and I'd been visiting with my friend Jimmy Faulkner, and Jimmy had shared with me that he was coming to the Mother Church to help them with their annual budget process, and he would be talking in the service. And I came to that service to hear my friend Jimmy Faulkner speak, and Jimmy moved me so much that day that I went home and told my wife, we're going back to First Methodist Church. So Jimmy Faulkner is here today with us, and Jimmy, I want to thank you for moving me that day to accelerate that return, and thank you for that. Now the other thing, my daughter always tells me whenever I speak, after my dad's funeral, the first thing my daughter said to me is, Dad, you're always so patriarchal. You never give any women credit for anything whenever you talk. So before I get into my prepared remarks, which may be a little patriarchal, I need to say something good about some women. So I was talking about Jimmy Faulkner, so I'm going to tell you folks, everybody thinks Winston is the real deal. I've got some inside information. The power behind all that Faulkner operation is Martha. I'm a man that knows big wood from kindling wood, and Winston is the kindling wood, and Martha is the big wood. Well, it was 1980, and I was single and in my mid-20s. And it was a good time in my life. I'd been recruited to come to First Methodist Church by Winston Faulkner. He knew I'd been a lifelong Methodist at First Methodist in Clarendon, and Bill Fuller, the youth director, had persuaded me to coach the youth basketball team. I was surprised and excited one day to get a call from Judge Bill Smith. Now, I knew Judge Smith from First Methodist Church, but I'd never had a real conversation with him. Now, the year before, myself and 5 other men had just started our own business, so I logically concluded that Judge Smith had called and asked me to lunch because he wanted to talk with me about how our new firm could do some business with his law firm. I was in for a big surprise. So I went to the First Commercial Building, had lunch with Judge Smith. We exchanged pleasantries over lunch. The plates were removed, and for those of you who know Judge Smith, it was time to get down to business. Judge Smith leaned over the table, looked at me sternly over the top of his glasses. He said, boy, he said, I've been making inquiries around town about you. And I've talked to Winston extensively about you and your business. And I know you're doing pretty good. But then the judge looked down, shook his head with despair, and said, but son, I've seen your pledge card. And he flipped it across the table, and it landed in front of me. And the judge said, son, you're just going to have to do better than that. You're going to have to do a lot better than that. And so I was at first taken aback by the judge's directness. Because you see, at that point in time in my life, I hadn't realized yet that in just a year, I would marry my wife in the chapel right over here. There were just 4 of us there: Dr. Alvin Murray, Linda, myself. Dr. Murray's wife, Mary Ellen, was the witness, the only witness. Now, Linda got up the next morning and went to work at Rose City Elementary. I got up and went to work in downtown Little Rock. Within 48 months, that cute little thing over there had popped out 3 of the best children on earth. They were all baptized right here at this chancel rail. And as the years progressed, we saw them confirm their baptism as a member of the confirmation class. Just 3 years ago, I buried my father in this beautiful sanctuary. Mary Jane Cole officiated at the service. My friend Melissa Toma provided the music, and I did the eulogy. It was a sad day for my family, but it was a victorious one as well. But my memories at this old church just keep getting better and better. My best memory took place in February of this year. Our youngest son was about to leave to go to New York to finish his education. And it was a communion Sunday like today, and I walk into church and Payne is here. I sit down with my son, and after the sermon it was time to have communion, and Payne and I knelt right there on that end of the chancel rail. And after the servers passed by, Payne leaned over to me and he whispered in my ear and said, "Dad, would you give me a blessing?" And so I got to kneel right there. I put this arm around my son's waist. I grabbed his forearm firmly with my right hand. And we prayed for my son to have wisdom. My son and I prayed for him to make good decisions. And I asked the Lord to look after him while he was in a strange place where he had no family and he had no friends. It doesn't get much better than that, I promise you. So back to my story. As the years progressed, Judge Smith became one of my mentors, here at church. And I learned to do better. As the judge admonished me, I learned to do a lot better. But what I didn't realize in that there would be a really special blessing for me. For a young man in his 20s or 30s to be around the lines, some of the saints of this church that are no longer with us, for a young man in his formative years, that was a real blessing. Because you see, my friend Dick Butler would be right there every Sunday. And my friend Tyndall Dickinson was right here. And Martin Burkett would be right back there behind Craig where he sits. And Judge Smith was always in the back middle. And my friend John Riggs would be right behind me every Sunday. And John Riggs showed me, he never told me anything, but John Riggs showed me what the word gentleman really meant. And for a young man that was trying to learn what things were about, that was really special. Because those men showed me firsthand how to lead my family. And those men showed me how to invest in my community. But most of all, those men showed me how to love and support this church. I wanted to be like those men. I yearned to be just a little bit like those lines of this church. I wanted to lead my family the way they did. I wanted my wife and me to put our imprint on this community the way I'd seen them do that. And I wanted to support my church the way that I'd seen them do it. Now, years later, the mantle of responsibility to care for this great church has fallen upon the shoulders of the men and women in this room today. How will we respond? Our programs and services here at this church need to be vibrant, and they need to be meaningful. It is the responsibility of those of us in this room to see that the financial resources are available so that those programs can be meaningful and they can be vibrant. Our senior pastor and his staff must be able to depend upon a solid budget so they can implement our programs in a meaningful way. We need to respond and support this capital campaign. Today is All Saints Day, so I'm going to call on some of the lines and the saints of this church. Tyndall, Dick Butler, Martin Burkett, John Riggs, Judge Smith, thank you for showing me the way. Thank you for your friendship, and thank you for your witness on how to lead your family, support your community, and love your church. Now, I call upon all of you in this room to help us underwrite the financial needs of this church going forward. Thank you.